Hello everyone, thank you for being here. This is Goose Auto Works, and this is what we're doing today. Alright, hello everybody and welcome back. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing if this helps you out. So obviously, this is going to be our brake booster. But what is this little thing? This is something that is pretty important and often gets overlooked in these jobs, and it's pretty critical to making sure this whole thing works appropriately. Let me explain. Alright, so when installed on the vehicle, you have your master cylinder, your brake booster, firewall, and then you have this plunging rod here. And the plunging rod extends inside the vehicle and attaches to the brake pedal itself. On the bottom side of the brake pedal, you have this guy right here. Now what this is just your brake switch, and it predominantly just controls the brake lights turning on and off. So when this little plunger is depressed, turns the brake lights off. When it's all the way out, turns the brake lights on. Does not have any kind of bearing on your actual braking ability, but have you ever been driving behind somebody? It seems like their brake lights are just on all the time, and they're not trying to slow down or anything. You just kind of can't really tell what the heck's going on. Well, that can happen with this. So again, not really a problem as far as your actual ability to stop, but when it can become a problem is on these types of vehicles. Even if you're not depressing the pedal at all, you're not trying to slow down whatsoever, if the computer sees that the brake lights are on, it thinks you're trying to stop. And sometimes what can happen is it can pull the ability for you to accelerate. And that's obviously an issue if you are trying to pull out into traffic from a parking lot, for example, trying to go around someone on a highway, or even just going to get out of somebody's way. And when I say it's a problem, it's not so much of like, oh, this feels kind of sluggish or there's some misfires or something like that. It's pedal to the floor, you've got nothing. No RPM increase, no speed increase, just nothing at all. And it's usually just for a second, and then you can kind of pump the pedal and then it will come back to you. But obviously in a pinch, you do not want that to be an issue. So save yourself some trouble, some potential accidents, and just pick up one of these. And the reason why you have to replace this as well, or why you more than likely will need to, is this plunger is set to a certain depth at the time of the install, and it remembers that depth. So even though these brake boosters are obviously meant to be interchangeable, the new part's supposed to be just like the old part, if the plunger rod does not extend to the exact same depth as the old one and does not press this into the exact same spot that it used to be, you could signal the lights turning on. Or even on the opposite end, you could press down on the brakes and your lights don't come on at all, and you're slowing down and someone's behind you and your brake lights aren't coming on. So I'll show you how to set this whenever you install it later, but this is about 30 bucks. Just pick it up at the same time, save you a lot of trouble in the end. To get started, you're going to need to take off the intake with the airbox and filter. Just a couple of small fasteners here, not really a big deal. With that out of the way, you can move on to the battery and battery tray. Again, a few small fasteners, not a big deal at all. With the battery tray out of the way, you can gain access to the brake booster. There's going to be a few vacuum lines that are attached to it that you can just pry loose. And after you get those out of the way, you can move on to the master cylinder. Master cylinder is going to have a couple of long studs on there with some nuts on it. Kind of a cramped working area, but just keep working on those and you can eventually get it loose. Be sure just to take off the nuts that are on the studs and don't disconnect the brake lines themselves. Here we are on the inside, and we have 4 13mm nuts to take off. So we have these two on this left hand side of the plunger. There's number 3 right there, and number 4 is going to be tricky to show you on camera, but it's going to be right there, you see. So if that one's 3, that one's 4. Easiest way to orient yourself is just to go on either side of this plunger here. So again, those are 13mm. I'm going to take those off, and then right here, this blue clip, that is what is going to hold that plunger onto our pedal. And so that ring right there, or that clip, sorry, just compresses, and then you can pull this blue clip out to free everything up, and then whenever you put the new booster in, you'll just line the pedal up with that plunger again and put this little retaining clip back in there and let it snap in. So you can watch me here try to get this out for a little while before I give up and move on to what is really the best method, and that is going to be to just remove the intake manifold. You don't have to completely take it out of the vehicle, you just need to loosen it up enough to where you can scoot it out of the way. I know it seems like a lot of extra steps and a lot of extra work, but it frees up that valuable space that you need to be able to get that brake booster out, where it is just not going to come out otherwise. There's just too many things that it keeps getting caught on, and it's just going to save you a lot of time in the long run just to go ahead and put the work in here. All of that for a freaking pancake, dude. This job sucks. There is no way around it. I've done it before, said I would never do it again, had somebody who needed help, told them I'd help, but for real this time, just on this vehicle at least, just no more. This thing is so impossibly buried in there that the amount of work it takes to get it out is just absurd. If you are doing it yourself though, I would use the method that I just glossed over, which is removing the intake manifold. I believe the Ford service manual says to remove the intake manifold. I've seen where people have gotten this out without having to do that and without having to disconnect brake lines, and I don't see how. I don't see how. And I would go the route of the intake manifold removal as opposed to disconnecting brake lines, because the lines you'd have to disconnect are attached to your ABS block, and so unless you have the right equipment to cycle that on and off and to bleed that properly, I wouldn't do it. And even if you did, just the intake manifold is so much faster. I should have done that to begin with, but I was just trying to avoid having to replace gaskets and things. But the amount of time it would have saved on the front end, it would have been worth it. So the other part I want to talk about is on the inside, removing the nuts on these 4 bolts. That job is also rough, simply because there's no room in there. There is no room in that footwell. As I stand today, I'm about 6 foot 235, and I cannot fit very well. And so if you're a bigger guy or a gal and you're trying to do this job, get ready, because it is rough. I would not park so close to a wall or a fence or another car or something like that, because you're going to want as much room as possible to open that driver's side door. You're going to want as much room to sprawl out as possible, because you're going to have to twist and contort every way imaginable to get to all the places you need to be to get this out. I would have universal joints, I would have extensions, I would have patience and like some old towels or something to lay on, because just if you're watching this and it's applicable to you, trust me, you're gonna know what I'm talking about. It's not fun, but it's out. I'm gonna match this up with the new one. It better freaking match, and we'll get the new one on and get this buttoned up. Alright, so it's the next day, but I wanted to be able to show you guys this part in the daylight, and that is swapping out this brake switch here. So first, you're going to do everything else that you need to do, replace, all the parts that you're going to replace, and then do this last. And to remove this, you're going to grab it, and then you're going to twist it in the clockwise position and pull it out. Then you can go ahead and disconnect it from its pigtail here. Then with your new one, what I'm going to do is actually put it in first and lock it in, and then connect the pigtail, so that the first signal it sees from this is going to be its new set signal. And so I've started the car. There is going to be some vacuum in the brake booster right now, so I can push this down easily, but I have the car turned off. Again, that's just so I don't accidentally send any signals I don't want to through this pigtail, but that's going to allow me to be able to easily press this down. So what you're going to want to do is press it down fully, go ahead and then stick in your new sensor. And then twist it counterclockwise to lock it in. Okay, and now that that's there, I'll go ahead and release the pedal, and now it has pushed in the plunger and set it to where it wants to be. And now that that has happened, I'll just take my pigtail and connect this back. Okay, and now with that all set in, whenever you press the brake pedal and then let it come back, the brake light should not be on. So let's go ahead and look at that right now and see if that's the case. And the brake light is indeed off, so that means we are good to go. So that's gonna pretty much do it for this one, guys. I'm dirty, I'm gross, I'm tired, but you know, all in all, removing that intake manifold to get the brake booster off, you know, that part in and of itself isn't that bad, honestly. It's all of the other little things collectively that just make the job rough. You know, navigating that footwell, because there's really no room to work in there. And in this case, I determined that the master cylinder probably failed first and then caused the brake booster to fail. There was some brake fluid inside of it and things like that. So, you know, replacing that after I thought I was done, bleeding all the brakes and stuff. So it's just stuff that could kind of snowball into something bigger. But the only thing getting you through it is just knowing how astronomical the price would be if you try to take it to a shop or a dealership or something like that, to have them replace it. And you know, honestly, if you have to do that, that's perfectly fine. There's no shame in that. You know, it's better to do that than to get halfway through a job that might be over your head and you know you're stuck, or even just if your time simply is more valuable to you than whatever that shop cost is, that's fine too. But if you are going to do it yourself, I do hope that this video was helpful to you. I hope that you learned a few things. Don't forget about that brake switch. And yeah, if it was helpful, please consider subscribing. It helps me out. But other than that, I'll see you guys in the next one.